So I'm going to talk a little bit about our history as an AAPI community, and specifically the time period in which Chinatowns were created. Because this bill can lead to our communities being segregated out. Back in the 50s and 60s, and shortly after the Japanese internment camps, real estate agents were not comfortable selling property to Chinese people, to Korean, to Japanese. The easiest way for them to go about doing that was to sell them to a specific area, which is how the development of Chinatowns would happen. Because to try to sell into your white suburban community, you didn't know if you were violating any laws at that time because of the Japanese internment camps and the remnants effects following that. And we can see this here, where real estate agents and brokers are so unsure of whether or not they're violating the law, they're going to look for pockets of land where they can sell that land to a Chinese person, knowing that they will not violate the law. Now, we've got the military installations, but the law itself is fairly vague. So a recruitment center, a military recruitment center, can be considered a military installation. Now, if you apply that definition, there's no land in Georgia that is not within 10 miles of a military installation. And so in that gray area, we can see the emergence of segregating Asian populations. And now that sounds a little bit extreme, but it's a reality, right? If you were looking back in the 1940s, the idea of a Japanese internment camp may have seemed extreme, but it happened, and our Supreme Court did not say that was unconstitutional. Right? They said that was perfectly fine. It was perfectly legal in times of war to do that to fellow Americans. So the idea that internment camps could never ever happen again, it can, and some version of that can happen through laws like this. Now, this law points to a homeland definition or list of countries. And if you're wondering what would be a better option would actually to turn to the Department of Defense list of actual Chinese military companies that are banned from doing business in the US. But instead, they're pointing to countries, not lists of companies in Russia, in Iran, and China. I'll give you an example. Huawei is still barred from purchasing land and doing certain business in America because they present an actual threat. And you know that is a company that you can point to that has taken actions of espionage towards our country. So these lawmakers, instead of pointing to these lists that have been proven to be a danger to our country, they're pointing to just a list of countries, which is way too broad. So my ask to you all, I know you all are going to be advocates and you're going to fight against this, but it's your neighbors, it's your friends who don't understand, who might go, well, isn't China a threat? Shouldn't we be concerned? In so many ways, just about any country, any corporation can be a threat from a competitive economic standpoint. But when a law is written specifically to point out a nation versus the organizations within those countries, we have a problem. And we cannot allow history to repeat itself. And I want you to take that back to your neighbors, to your friends, not just Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Asian neighbors and friends, but all of your neighbors. Make them understand, or help them to understand, that when you're looking at a list targeting a nation versus looking at a list targeting actual companies that have done espionage or corporate espionage, patent stealing from us, that's where we should be focusing national security, not on a broad list. And so that's my challenge to you all tonight. Thank you for coming out, and keep making sure that your voices are heard at the legislature. And I will finish with this one last point. In 2021, we had the Asian spa shooting. By the beginning of 2022, when we looked at the Georgia State Legislature, we saw the governor and the Republicans go after Michelle. They literally drew her out of her Senate district. We were looking at being down to 4. Sam Park, Marvin Lim, Sheikh Rahman, actually 3. We were staring at being reduced down to 3 API representatives in the Georgia State Legislature. In 2022, we had over 23 Asian Americans run. That was huge. It was 12 Democrats and 11 Republicans. And so we went from being reduced to 3, to coming out of the November 2022 with 11 of us, which is huge. At that time, only Hawaii was larger than us. California since has had a couple of special elections, so now they're at 13, but 11 for the Southeast is huge, and you see it. We stopped the law last year, and we're fighting like crazy to stop it this year. But we need more to get into the Georgia legislature. There can no longer be this fear or thought of inconvenience to run for office. We need more. I'd like to see 20, 25 of us. That is real change. That is driving policy if we can get to those numbers. And things like this will never happen again. There was one rep who she decided to get up and speak in Spanish for her well speech. The day after that, another rep decided he was going to try to pass a bill, and it's still being circulated, to prevent any language other than English being spoken on Capitol grounds. Right? We can't go back to those days. The 11 of us will always fight, but if there were 20 of us, they won't even bring up bills like that. And so Michelle King is a candidate. If we have more candidates running, we will be in a far better place. Thank you.